one of our previous events, we had this gentleman speak about his experience with AI, and he has a lot of experience with AI. I think he probably had an AI company before we even knew what AI was. So I'm not trying to age you here, Earl, but everybody give Earl Mann a round of applause. Earl. I was trying to figure out what you're going to talk about. I know he's going to talk about leadership. Earl is ex-military. Okay, he can tell you about himself, but Earl, please take the stage, pop your mic on there for me, and share some knowledge with the audience. Thank you. Earl Mann, everybody.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. So, just so I can understand who I'm speaking to, how many people are business owners?
You're on next at 6:50.
Founders? How many people are owners of companies that are less than 5 years old? More than 5 years old? Okay, how many people manage teams more than a dozen? Less than a dozen? Okay, and I see some people aren't going to respond. That's okay. So here's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to try to, in the next 20 minutes or so, give you the value of outside perspective. It's actually an outside perspective I've used for 30 years. I've been in startup. I've been a tech startup person for 30 years almost. I'm old. So my first startup was in 2000. It was an actually machine learning company back then. But one of the things I relied upon that entire time was just some things I carried forward with me that I was taught specifically through my training to become a Marine Corps officer. So what I'm going to do today is try to share with you some of the tenets and principles from a doctrine called maneuver warfare, which is what Marines operate around. That's how we are taught to think. And it's the thing that makes us different among the rest of the services and makes us think we're special along the way. But I'm going to try to do it and give you examples and make it practical. My goal is to give you something you can use tomorrow or today. That's my goal. My goal is to try to give you something so practical that if you get it, you can just use it instantly in your own way, in your own application. And it's going to come, and the reason why I want to give you this outside perspective is because we, as entrepreneurs and founders, we stare at, look at, think about, dream about, fear about, freak out about, stress about the same thing every single day, all day long, and we get a tunnel vision. We are very focused on what we're trying to do. And because we're so focused on what we're trying to do, we only see what we see. That can be a good thing in some cases, but more often than not, we miss a lot of opportunity because of that extreme focus. So here's the value, and I'm going to use stories and examples as much as I can because you can communicate faster. And I'm from a little small southern town, so if I speak too fast, just tell me to slow down, okay? So the story was told that back at the beginning of the Olympics, people do the high jump, where you jump over the bar backwards. Everybody know that sport? You've seen it on Wide World of Sports or something, right? The story is told that back in 776 in ancient Greece, that people used to jump over the bar front ways. And there was a gymnast watching people jump over the bar front ways, and he made the comment, you know, when I do a backflip, when I do a tumble and I bounce in the air to do a backflip, that's the highest point of time I get off the ground. And that was the insight that led to people changing the way they jumped across the bar from frontwards to backwards. That's why I'm giving you outside perspective. That was outside perspective that completely changed that sport and completely became what was possible for people to do. That's why the outside perspective. Okay, here's where the perspective comes from. I'm going to describe the world that the creators of maneuver warfare assumed existed. These are the things they took just to be fact. And if you're in a tech startup or if you're in a startup, raise your hand if any of these you can relate to. The first thing, it's called the fog of war, which means nothing you look at will ever be crystal clear, no matter what you do. There's always going to be a difference between what you think you see and what you're actually looking at. In most people, there's always going to be a disconnect no matter how good you are at it. You're going to have to make incredibly critical decisions on data. Half of your data is wrong. You just don't know which half. Okay? Some of your people, some of your competition today will be your allies tomorrow. Some of your allies today will be your competition tomorrow. These are just things that they threw into the bucket of things that we must take into consideration when we come up with the way we want to operate. So when you look at those things, it creates a picture of chaos, a little bit of chaos, right? In our world, chaos is expected. It's actually a good thing. And the reason why it's a good thing is because it's not unique to you. You and your competitors have to deal with the same chaos. So it comes down to who can leverage chaos the best. Who can make the best use of a chaotic, constantly changing, ever-changing situation? And if you're in a startup, every day is different, every week is different. You're taking a right turn, you're pivoting. You are in a chaotic mess most of the time. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, it's just what it feels like. So where did the Marines come up with how did they decide that they were going to deal with chaos? They stole it from an environment more chaotic than their own. They stole it from a fighter pilot. They looked at dogfights and jets fighting each other and realized that, you know what? The person in that jet has way more things to operate and think about and worry about than we ever have. How do they do that? And that was what they stole to create this whole idea of maneuver warfare around that we're going to talk about some tenets from. So the very first thing I would do if I were you, and I'll try to give you lessons along the way or things that you might want to make note of. The first thing is spend a lot of time getting clear on your model, what your model is, why it is you do the things you do and how, before you focus all on product and customers and clients and all that stuff, because the model's going to be the thing that generates. That's the heartbeat of what everything you're building your effort around is your model. The better the model, the more successful you're going to be, in spite of talent. I like to talk about things that in spite of talent. If your model's good enough, you can get away with less talented everything. If your model's good enough, you don't have to have perfect timing. You don't have to have a perfect bank account. You don't have to have the long list of things that you stay up at night worrying that you don't have because you don't have them. If you have a really good model, you will overcome them. So here are some techniques. I'm going to talk about some techniques that we've used, and I'm jumping around a little, but I'm trying to be useful. I got 20 minutes to find something you can use tomorrow, right? So I'm going to give you just techniques that we use as Marines that are built into the way we think and the way we operate. One, we do not micromanage. In spite of what people think we do, that's the opposite of what we do. We give mission-type orders. Here's the difference. There's a bridge. You're at a bridge. And what we do not do is tell the person you give an order to, don't let the enemy come across the bridge. That's not what we do. What we say is, no matter what, people can't cross the river from that side. Do you understand? You validate that your communicate was received and they fully understand it. And then you go off and you do, knowing that no matter what, they understand the mission, not the tactics, not the technique, not the specifics. Now, the person that gave the order, if somebody was to ask them, or how are they going to stop the people from coming across the river, he has no idea. He's not there. The person he gave the order to is there. It's a completely different way of thinking. It's a completely different way of communicating. And it gives the people closest to the problem the most latitude to actually solve the problem that shows up in the real world. I've seen a dozen hundred times I've seen people that are they just want people to do it their way. Do this exactly like this. No, do it this way because I see and they might be giving the perfect way for the wrong problem. Mission type orders. That's a takeaway. It makes sense? Makes sense. That's how all the tactics I'm about to give you now are ways to overcome the lack of the fog of war and the lack of information and the enemies being friends. These are things that you can use to navigate around that. The second thing you want to do is you want to have centralized command but decentralized execution, right? That means that you do want to have people that are thinking the big thoughts, thinking strategically, doing these things, but you want to push the execution of everything that you can to the lowest common denominator you possibly can get it to. And then you want to empower that person with a mission type order to figure it out. Now you want to communicate with them, have a way to check balances, see what's going on, but that's your best way to navigate in an unknown future. And believe it or not, as good as your business plan is, you are smack dab in the middle of an unknown future. You've just talked yourself into believing that it's known. You've talked yourself believing that your spreadsheets are going to pan out like they do when you open up your little pretty laptop, and it's not going to work that way. It's going to be different a little bit, different a lot. It's going to be all these things. It's going to be the fog of war. Make sense? The second thing we do habitually in the Marine Corps. Now, some of these things may apply, some of these things won't. I'm just trying to hit a bunch really quick. What we also do is we empower people, but at the same time, we make everybody expendable on purpose. We make everybody expendable on purpose, which means when I teach you something and I teach you something, you have to teach a little bit of him. You got to constantly cross-communicate to what everybody's doing, because you may quit tomorrow. In the real world, in the military, you don't quit, but you do disappear. And you don't. We have an exercise we do called, oh man, it's like 35 years ago. Y'all tested me. It's like conflagration or something like that. Where we're on the field, we're going through an exercise, and there's a guy with a microphone like this, and every so often he does to say freeze. And everybody on this big field of freeze, and you got a bunch of people randomly walking through, tagging people to lay down. They're no longer in the game. But your unit, when they said go, you have to continue moving forward from where they said stop with the missing people. You understand? So now you see why we teach redundancy, right? Because we understand what we perceive to be reality in our world, which means we can't 100% count on our entire team being there from start to finish. So we need to do things that allow us to overcome that and not know who's going to actually start or finish. Make sense? These are very practical, easy things to do. So when you do that, what are some of the rules we live by? We live by distributed trust. Distributed trust, which means I trust, there's trust between me and you based on our communication, and then I have to have trust that person, when they go to the next person, can trust. Everything is built on that chain of trust. Now, once we say that out loud, we realize that when we're trying to build our team, when we're recruiting for our team, when we're assembling our team, what's a characteristic we're going to look for evidence of before we recruit them? Trust. See how that makes sense? It makes sense. Once you define the theater you're going to work in, then you know what rules to put in place. Most people do it completely opposite. They do it the completely opposite of the things I'm suggesting to you. Right? So these are little examples of things you can do to gain the ability to overcome big odds. I've never been in the big company. I've never been a giant, I've always been Jack, if that makes sense. Jack the Giant Killer. My entire career, I've been the little unknown startup fighting the brand leader with all the clients and all the money and all the people and all the resources, and we've always been no resources, none of those things, and still we found a way. We found a way to beat the giant. The ego in me loved that. I kind of lived for that a little bit. I like beating those odds, but I beat those odds using some of these techniques I'm talking to you now. So one of the things they stole from the pilot, remember the pilot? Where we stole the whole idea from maneuver warfare, how do you work in chaos and be successful? What we learned was his way of thinking. It's actually called the OODA loop, OODA, or observe, orient, decide, and act. You make an observation, you orient to the observation, you make a decision, and then you take an action. And then you immediately start over again. You orient, observe, decide, act. Orient, deserve, decide. And that's what you keep doing over and over and over. Because what they found in jet pilot combat is that the pilot that could cycle through that decision cycle fastest would eventually win. Now, let's play that out in technology. You can use that at the strategic level. Tesla can take real-time data from their automobiles, from their customers, from their supply chain. And because they're a software-driven company, they can make real-time updates in the moment. That's an advantage. They can cycle through their business decision cycle faster than a traditional car can. Make sense? Amazon does the same thing with pricing. I don't know if you know this. Amazon does the same thing with pricing. They see what everything sells for in Amazon. Who's buying it? How much? When? Why? Where? So they can introduce their preferred products and or their own products, etc., and take advantage of all of that data. They can cycle through the decision cycle faster than other people. right? Makes sense? You have to find a way to do that with your team. You have to find a way to, as a team, work through the decision cycle faster than your competition, if you can. Another thing we do is we misalign strengths and weaknesses. We put our weakness, obviously, and these are practical things when you think about them. People just don't put them into strategic practice. If we can, we try to put our strength up against the competition's weakness. You don't want to put your strength against their strength. You might have a standoff. We're not here for a stalemate. We're here to win. We want to put our strength up against weakness. So you want to, or another way stated, you want to try to position your weakness, find a way to make it a strength. I'll give you a real world example. I'm always Jack, right, trying to fight the giant. So I know when I go into a customer, I remember I went to a customer in Atlanta, and they wouldn't work with us because we were so small. They said, no, we have to work with this big company, you're too small to work with us. And my reply was, you perceive our size to be a liability, we think it's an asset. Here's why it's an asset. They're the biggest company in the industry. Their clients are actually calling them. You're one of many calls that they have to feel, and I'll tell you what you can do to test my theory. Let's have our next significant meeting tomorrow. We can do it. See if they can do it. Call them up right now and say, hey, we want to do a follow-up. It's Tuesday. Let's do it Thursday. And when they tell you they can't do it Thursday, call me back. Because they're showing you the difference between us and them. To me, you're a priority. To them, you're someplace in a very long list of people that are dying to work with them. It's a difference. That makes sense? You see, I've turned the strength into turn the weakness into a strength. That's how you do it. And if you can think like this, if you can constantly think, different than everybody else is thinking in your industry. What I did the reason I was able to set that company up to fail on that call, and they did do that experiment, they called them right up and said, hey, can we do the call next week? And guess what? That company couldn't do the call for 3 weeks. Psychologically, we won that game right in that moment. They started to listen to more and more things we had to say. But the reason I was able to do that, because what I was able to do was to imagine, well, what world, what dynamics is my competition working from? How does their world work? Their world works where their phone's ringing off the hook. They have a lot of different clients. That's the world they live in. So all I had to do was understand that and then think to myself, okay, what's difficult for that to do in that world? What's difficult to do in that world is to work nimbly, work quick, work fast, work on a day-by-day schedule. They can't do it. So I made that the thing I centered my communication around. Make sense? So the next thing we want to do is, how many people struggle with motivating your team? How many people have to motivate a team? Well, how many people think they should be motivating a team? Nobody. How many people, there's nobody in here that feels part of their mission. I just want to make sure I ask the right question. There's nobody in here that feels that part of their responsibility as founder / CEO / operator of a startup is to motivate other people towards your cause. There's nobody that, okay. So if that is you, and it should be everybody, what most people try to do is find a way to become more motivating to their team. And I would say my outside perspective is that's not the approach. You just need to become more motivated yourself and let them observe you in a high state of motivation. What you want is intrinsic motivation. You want motivation that comes from within the individual. You don't want to have to sit here. I don't want to find a way to get Nick excited about doing something I'm talking about now. My goal is to find out what is Nick intrinsically motivated for already. And then find a way to align his intrinsic motivation with my strategic need. Everybody get the subtle difference in that? It's a subtle difference, but it's going to make all the difference in the world. It's the way I was able to get small teams of salespeople to work for half the money and have more fun and get more value out of what they were doing and not quit when times got hard. Because I tapped into intrinsic motivation. There's no more powerful source of go do it than that. Most people try to focus on external motivation. How can I be motivating to my team in this motivating meeting I'm about to have at 8:30 in the morning? They focus on that. And when they walk out of the door, the motivation walks right out of the door with them. As opposed to trying to find a way to quickly find out what's the intrinsic source of that individual's motivation. And usually you can find by asking, hey, what do you like to do? What's your interest? Why are you doing this job? Where are you trying to be? What do you want to be doing in this company in 5 years? What do you see 10 years? What does that look like? Just quick, you will get a very good glimpse, right? Take that glimpse and run with it. Okay, here's how I think what you can do for me right now will serve you in what you're trying to do already. You got it. And that's perfect alignment right there. That is perfect alignment, especially when you give that intrinsically motivated person a mission type order, right? And you do it, and you've done a good job of defining the chaos, and you expect it to be chaotic, and you tell them in advance, hey, it's going to be chaotic, but that's going to be a great thing. So it's not a surprise to them. That's a road sign that they're on the right way. These are the things that make you the giant killer. These are the things that make you overcome the obstacles. So when you do a bunch of any of these things together, if you do 2 or 3 of these things at the same time, here's what it's going to allow you to do in practice. What you're going to be doing in practice is it's going to allow you to make it's going to make good enough decisions very early in the process. And you're going to make good enough decisions. I didn't say perfect. I didn't say best. I didn't say prettiest. I didn't say most sophisticated. You're going to be able to make good enough decisions, but you're going to be able to make those good enough decisions so early in the process. And then what you're going to do, because you observe, orient, decide, and then you act. Every time you act, it changes things around you, but it doesn't change your strategy. If tomorrow you decided that, hey, you know what we need to do? Our product needs to be free. I don't know, I'm just making things up. You do something that you know is in opposition to what your people that you're competing with is doing. The minute you do that, they're going to pause and start trying to figure out, what are they doing? And while they're going through their decision cycle of trying to figure out what you're doing and how to adjust to it, you've cycled through OODA loop fast already, and guess what you've done already? You've made the next action. Boom. Oh, they did this now. And you just keep going. You just observe, orient, decide, act. Observe, orient, decide, act. If you can cycle through that and you keep doing that, eventually you win, probably more than not, over time. Because what you're doing is you're adapting to real-world input, real-world dynamics, real-world feedback. What you're doing is not letting disaster be a disaster. It's just an expected, oh yeah, chaos, that thing's supposed to show up. Oh, this must be that fog of war thing. I know my customer's having a hard time with this fog of war thing. Let me do a better job of cutting through it than he's doing, right? It's just a mindset. It's just a way of thinking. So I hope what you got out of a little bit of this today is just some different perspective, actually on perspective. Because this is all I'm sharing, right, is perspective. Yeah. But now you understand that if you can get outside perspective, what you need to constantly look at and adjust and nurture is your perspective. Your perspective as the leader, as the founder, as the chief believer, as that person, right? Your perspective matters a lot because your perspective is going to feed everybody else's perspective. And again, I didn't mention talent, I didn't mention education, I didn't mention background, I didn't mention any of those things, because if you can do all those things really, really well, you will be that company that nobody can figure out how you're winning with what you have. How are they even doing that? Why are they so different? Why are people even working with them? We have more people in support. And I've had all these comments told to me. I've had a company tell me, we have more people in research than you have in your whole company. You know, but you know what they couldn't beat us on? Conviction. They just couldn't beat us. I've been in some of the biggest companies in the world as a very little company. But in the moment, in the room, like if you were the outside observer and you had to just rate who believes more, 50-50. That's not a lay down, not with our guys in the room. Because we were so wrapped up in this stuff that made sense to us. And any of this make sense? Yes. Is it useful? Yeah. Is there anybody that found something, an idea, a concept that you can use tomorrow? Yeah. Absolutely great. Absolutely great. The last thing, and I can get your question, is you want to try to, anytime you communicate with your team about your perspective or with a request or idea, you want to challenge them to make it actionable. Okay, this is all sounds great, this is all great, great. And I do this in meetings up until today. We have a meeting, we toss around ideas, I say, okay, great. How do we what's the next step? What's the next piece of action we can take? And when can we take it? Because I'm oriented that way. I need it to start moving so I can start to, decision cycle stuff. Static doesn't help me. Somebody had a question, comment. Yes?
All right, so on the UDA, the observe, orient, decide, act, can you give some simple steps of day-to-day practices that we can start building that muscle so that we utilize it effectively?
Yeah, I would take it at its most surface level meaning to you. Is literally, take it literal first. That you take a look at what is going on, right? What you believe to be going on. That can be in your company, in your market, with your partners, whatever it is you're looking at. What do you believe to be going on? And then either you want to figure out how am I oriented, like how does that affect my positioning, or how should it affect my positioning? Based on those two things, you make a decision, like right there in the moment. And you trust your decision. Let me take all the pressure off making that decision, because people are going to resist making a decision. Most people just don't want to decide on anything. Marines are the complete opposite. We just like to decide all freaking day long. So what you want to do is you make a decision, and then you take the action related to that decision, and then guess what you do? Who knows the sequence? I just told it to you.
Yeah, you just observe.
So boom. You see what happened when I took that big action?
I see. So you're just creating an endless loop.
It is endless. It's over when you win, or it's over when you move to the next. Yeah, but you will do this strategically or tactically or individually.
So the way I see this is you're setting brain parameters in a specific loop to allow you to make decisions quickly and efficiently, and then act on those in a very small amount of time.
Yes, but what you are married to is the cycle itself, not the quality of the components of the cycle.
Okay.
And that's what allows us to make decisions. I have a friend of mine, super successful business guy, that makes decisions even fast, so fast that even I'm like, oh, damn, that was fast. In the middle of talking about things, he is making decisions and taking action. We're talking about a startup idea, comes up with a name. Hold on, let me get that URL. And blah, 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 blah. Hold on, I know a guy. Let me send his email. He's doing it in real, he's a Marine too, by the way. But he's doing this in real time, and I know what he's doing, and I appreciate it, but it's wickedly fast. But his mentality is, you never know if it's gonna work. You never know until you do it. And the faster you can do it, the faster you know what you're really dealing with. And then you really know what you are. And then you really know if you can do it. Until all of that, you're just somebody that thinks they can do it. And I mean that in a loving way. But you're just somebody that thinks they can do it. You think you have a good idea. Sounds good. Yeah, and if the spreadsheet works like the spreadsheets work, and the documents work like that, and the pretty button clicks, it's all going to work out. I just never seen that happen. I've seen the opposite happen. Total chaos. Holy crap, that was never supposed to happen like that. That wasn't supposed to go that way. That's what I see. But I also see people that can stand in the middle of that drinking coffee or whatever and say, okay, well, that sucks. Let's do it this way. Let's do it. Not let's, oh gosh, let's not. No, they're like, oh, the opposite was, okay, I think the next best decision based on this new data is this now. Do this now. Like a good decision given 100% maniac-like effort will beat a pristine decision done too late, even by better people. That's just we're taught that in class. We're taught that just be more committed and act more. We have a class on audacity, to be audacious. We have a class on taking initiative. All these intangible things that make us move quick, decide, side, take it in, take a breath. Yeah, it sucks. Now what? Make sense?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, that was great. Okay, so before we go, give everyone that acronym again. Everyone should write this down.
They got it. OODA.
OODA.
It's just the OODA loop. You can just, it's a whole lot of science and study behind it now. But it's basically, you see it comes from how fighter pilots operate. But it's a good way of thinking. Cops use it. Cops use it. Because if they can cycle through decisions faster than the person they're trying to apprehend, they will get the upper hand on them. Anything that changes your scheduled habitual thinking, if you can go through that faster than them, you'll gain an advantage. Make sense? Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Earl, that was amazing. Thank you. I learned something. Did you? I took something away from that. Okay.